If you're curious about what your migraine triggers are, this is a great starting point for you. If you're new here, hi, I'm Casey. I am chatting here about all things living with migraine from my lived experience to sharing you different prevention and relief strategies and supporting you along the way, giving you inspiration, connection, all that good stuff, all that stuff that we need with migraine. So if that sounds good to you, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can keep hearing from me. So let's break it down. What exactly is a trigger? I say this all the time. The migraine brain hates change. So whenever we are faced with a change, whether that's externally in our environment, in our surroundings outside of our body, or internally, like inside of our body, whether it's like chemical or hormonal or whatever, those changes can cause a migraine attack to happen. Cause an attack, not cause migraine. The actual cause of migraine is probably your genetics. Probably just already like dormant in you. That's a weird way to put it, but what we're talking about specifically is what's causing each of those flare-ups of symptoms, of those migraine attacks. So whenever we are faced with a change, our migraine brain does this really super helpful thing where it is trying to protect us, and it sees these large fluctuations and it's like, hey, that's not right, we don't like that, let's protect ourselves. And it does it the worst way possible, giving you like a debilitating wave of symptoms. It's really great and fun and awesome. It's actually not at all any of those things, but that is what happens when we're faced with a trigger. We have a change and our brains are like, nope, we don't like that, let's do something about it, and it's unfortunately a migraine attack. So in later videos, I'm going to be breaking down the different types of triggers and giving you a lot more in-depth conversations about like what those triggers to maybe look out for are and what you can do about them. But in this video, we're just going to keep it very simple. It's a change, whether that's outside of our bodies or inside of it. Them. But here's the good news that I really want to make sure you know about, that just because you're faced with it, that doesn't mean that you're automatically going to get an attack. It's not like a 1-to-1 ratio. There's something called a threshold that we all have that kind of marks how resistant we are to developing a migraine attack and like how strongly specific triggers are going to impact us. So this threshold, people think about it a couple of different ways. The very popular way that I've seen talked about a lot online is this like bucket method, where you're filling up a bucket with more water each time you're faced with a trigger, and whenever you hit that point where the bucket is overfilled and it spills over, or a cup, whatever, you know, like that, something with water that you're filling up, whenever it's overfilled, that's the threshold. That's where your body's like, hey, we're done, we can't do this anymore. Happens. The way that this was actually first described to me that kind of resonates with me a little bit better is a physician told me that triggers stack. So it's kind of the same idea where you're building up to a threshold level like the top of the bucket, but each trigger you're faced with adds to that pile that you essentially are building, and it's kind of a it's kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. I don't like that phrase, but it's kind of that scenario where it's that final thing that is the trigger that sets everything off, and you may not have noticed all those other triggers that were kind of adding up along the way. What's she doing? Oh, we're curling. Okay, we're getting comfy. But here's why it's so important to focus on prevention strategies for our migraine, because we can change our threshold. It's possible to impact our threshold, whether that's through medication or something like that, but we can also look at our daily habits and routines and find ways to strengthen our resistance to migraine and potentially avoid some of these triggers that I will chat about in the future to not stack up towards that threshold as quickly. So that's all for today. Do make sure to hit the subscribe button so that you can see the next videos talking about triggers more in depth if you are curious about this topic, of course, and make sure you check out the description because I'll have some goodies for you in there. And that's it. So I will chat with you next time. See you soon.